Hello and welcome. Sometimes in life, things happen that remind you just gotta have a humble spirit. Just a minute ago, I tried to make this video and record it to my computer like usual, but instead I hit the stream to YouTube button. So many of my subscribers got to enjoy a video of me up here doing all my retakes and things that I say whenever I get wrong just to make me laugh, things that I try to keep a humble and humorous heart. So a lot of people have already seen this video, but like I keep telling my sons, whenever you mess up, the thing you gotta do is get right back up and try again. So we're gonna keep the live stream video unlisted, and instead we're gonna make this video again. So here we go. Take 2, everyone. So Farscape is one of my favorite sci-fi TV shows. At the beginning of the 2nd season, there's an episode where we see 2 plots going on. Plot A is revolving around a person named Trilix, who believes that he can cloak the entirety of Moya if he just brings Moya to wherever his home is, which happens to be located past these 5 pulsars. He gives the crew of Moya a warning that the light from the pulsars has been known to cause lesser species to have experiences of paranoia and distrust for one another. Obviously, everyone here is far too advanced for such a thing to happen, and they write it off. Meanwhile, the B plot focuses in on Chiana and the fact that she's brought some rations from the planet along with Trilix. Now, unfortunately, she wasn't able to bring very good rations. They have wanted posters all over the place for the crew of Moya now, and all she was able to procure are dried food squares, or as Crichton calls them, crackers. So throughout the episode, following this B-plot, as they grow more and more paranoid to each other, they really obsess over who has the crackers. Is he taking more than his fair share? Is she hoarding them? What's going on? Now, Crichton has brief moments of lucidity in which he realizes that they're just being insane, acting toward one another irrationally. However, he's still being affected, so he's pretty irrational himself, and he manages to knock out everyone and drag them to the mess hall, where he locks them up and begins to rant and rave at them about how Trilix, the guest they brought on board, is obviously the one behind everything. And he has this moment where he goes, "Do you know why I brought you here?" And someone says something about, because you're worried we're stealing the food squares. And Crichton pulls out his gun and he shoots the table with crackers on him, and he says, "The crackers don't matter!" And I had a moment this past week that really reminded me how much the crackers don't matter. You see, last week my little sister gave birth to 2 healthy girls, but there were some minor complications, some minor issues that came up around the delivery process. The first problem was, because of some health constraints, my sister was advised not to give birth naturally. They said, you know what, you need to do a C-section. So following the advice of the doctors, that's what they scheduled and did. Now, lots of people have C-sections. In fact, one of my sister-in-laws also had to have a C-section for 3 of her 5 kids. So we weren't too worried on that front. It wasn't something that my sister was looking forward to, but hey, I live about a mile away from her. My mom lives about 30 minutes away. Obviously, her husband and family are around, so we got this covered. Not too many worries. But then, right before she has her C-section, my brother-in-law, her husband, gets sick. And so they're not going to let him in the operation room at all. He won't be able to see his girls. And so we have to do a quick juggling of plans. Instead of my mom looking after their oldest son, now we're looking after their oldest son, and my mom's going to be with my sister in the OR. So we roll with it. Everything's going good. And then we find out that the coworker that gave my brother-in-law the sickness ended up dying from the sickness. And so not only has my sister just given birth, not only is she dealing with the C-section pain and recovery, not only is she having to deal with her husband not being there at all, but now she's having to deal with the concern that my husband might be about to die because apparently his coworker did. Now, I think after everything happened that I think it was the flu. And the coworker insisted on coming to work anyway. They never gave themselves time to recover. And apparently they weren't the healthiest of individuals anyway. And so I think those things are what contributed to their unfortunate downfall. And my heart and sympathy goes out to their family. But there were extenuating circumstances. So my brother-in-law, he's just fine. But it was something of extreme concern for my little sister. So we're all able to band together. We're able to get her through this time, and we get her home. And she's on the path to recovery. And then last night, she has to go back to the emergency room. She's just having extreme pain. Something seems to be wrong. And once she gets there, they find out that there is indeed a problem, a complication that came up because of the C-section. And I'm not going to get too into it. I'm going to respect her privacy here. They have to do surgery right away. And so I was up there last night with my mom and my brother-in-law, kind of waiting through the surgery process. And the surgery was a success. It did have, hopefully she's going to have to deal with something for just 3 to 6 months, and they're going to be able to do a second surgery and get rid of it. But it was intimidating because it was the same sort of things that happened to my dad. My dad died, like I said in the last video, I actually kind of stopped to think about it. He died the day after Christmas, so it's been about 8 months since my dad passed away. And he went through the same sort of process that my sister's going through. He didn't have a C-section. The things that are going on right now are things that my dad had to deal with. My sister doesn't have cancer, nothing like that. But the fact that there's kind of some extraneous circumstances, I'm trying to respect her privacy, and I hope you'll deal with me with this, with the vagueness I'm doing right now. But because of all this, it's an intimidating thing. And it really reminded me, there's so many times in life that we elevate things that don't matter into positions of high importance. For example, I was speaking with a young man earlier this week who lacked the ability to separate his political views from his personal being. And so the fact that I disagreed with him politically, and it wasn't even a hard disagreement, I just said, look, I think you're mistaking something. Go back, look at things historically. All I'm doing is asking that you take a look at it historically, you read up on it, and then you make sure that the position you're holding is correct. So I wasn't even outright against him. I was just asking him to stop, think, and reevaluate. And it drove him furious. Now, I don't know if there were other things going on in his life. There could have been extenuating circumstances. But the guy just lost his marbles that I would dare to ask him to evaluate anything. And he began to just throw slurs at me. And it was a very hostile situation that was brought on because of something that didn't matter. I mean, politics is ultimately just crackers. There's going to be good leaders. There's going to be bad leaders. But at the end of the day, whoever's in charge isn't going to keep me from doing what's right. Whoever's in charge isn't going to make me do things that are wrong. We get so tied up with our political identity that it's almost as if we think that because the leader is doing something bad, it means I'm bad, or it means our nation on the whole is bad, when it doesn't necessarily mean that. We can have the worst president in the White House in America, and that will in no way inhibit me from being kind and loving to the people around me. But we get this idea that the crackers are the central to everything, that people are stealing my crackers, people are taking more than their fair share of crackers. I have to protect my crackers at all costs. And it's nuts. It's insane, and we just gotta stop sometimes to remember that the crackers don't matter. Now, I don't want us to think that, or I'm not trying to argue that we can't talk about these things. I mean, I'm about to make a video on the Joker, on the status of the MCU, on Spider-Man leaving. These are fun things to talk about them. I enjoy it. I'm not trying to get up here and be holier than thou or anything like that, but it's just one of those things that it reminded me this week that the crackers don't matter. And so we need to focus on the things that do matter. And the Bible tells us, Jesus was speaking to a young man, I believe he was a rich man. I forget the full context of the passage, but he said, "Do not store treasures for yourself on earth, where rust and moth destroy and thieves break in to steal. Instead, store up treasures for yourself in heaven, things that are eternal." And we know from the scriptures that the things he's talking about are being kind to one another, being loving to one another, caring about someone's soul. I mean, there's a great line in a Terry Pratchett book, one of the Discworld novels, where there's a witch and she's saying, "I'd be a fearsome thing if I were a believer. For how could I believe in something and then not act on it?" And I think as Christians, a lot of times we forget that we need to act on our beliefs. I mean, the Bible tells me that anyone who doesn't believe in God and the fact that his son died on the cross for their sins is ultimately going to hell. So how can I as a Christian sit here and be okay with the fact that I'm not talking to you about it? It's a problem. And I think a lot of Christians need to address that. Now, I respect that not everyone believes the same things I believe. I even respect a lot of people will hear this and be really annoyed that I'm going off the rails on some religious tangent. But that's okay. I don't mind that you mind. In fact, I believe so much in what I believe that I'm going to say it anyway. And that's where I'm going to stop it. Because you know what? That's what matters. God is what matters. The way we treat each other is what matters. Everything else is just crackers. So guys, I know this is different from what I usually do. It definitely had a different beginning with me accidentally live streaming it. But you know what? That's part of the fun of doing these videos. I love making them. I hope you love watching them. So remember guys, you disagree with me, you agree with me, be sure to comment down below. And I hope you stick around. Be sure to hit that bell icon to be notified of when I do new videos, and subscribe to stick around and see future content. And until the next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift up your countenance and give you peace. Amen.